What's up, YouTube? It's Kevin in Colorado with another exciting episode of Tesla Today. Today we are doing the deeper dive into Tesla versus NIO for 2021. Which one should you invest in? Is NIO going to beat Tesla? Is Tesla going to beat NIO? Is there room for both? Let's jump into it.
Nothing has been more exciting than watching the electric vehicle names run wild, almost always higher, a few setbacks along the way, and they keep making new ground. Dan Ives has been a big part of telling us that was going to happen. He's a managing director of equity research at Wedbush, has been bullish on these names.
And why should we listen to Dan Ives? Let's check out how Dan Ives ranks on TipRanks. And there he is. Wow. Number 36 out of over 7,000 analysts. Even though Dan's been a Tesla bull for a while, he's really become woke over the last probably 6 to 12 months, realizing that Tesla is more than a car company. It's an energy company, and other analysts are starting to see that as well.
Dan, let's start with NIO today. Let me just get your response to the aftermarket news that they are going to take advantage a little bit of some of the environment right now. It seems $1.3 billion in convertible senior notes. So there's a little stock involvement given the convertible aspect. What's that mean?
Yeah, I think we're seeing that across the space. And ultimately, it's about raising capital. And that's what more and more is the focus of these EV players. I mean, it's really right now, just a massive arms race, and you're seeing more and more capital needs. You'll see knee-jerk reaction, just like we've seen when Tesla has done similar things. But ultimately, it's a positive move, as it's all about further and further capital to build out, really the vision over the coming years.
So right now, is this kind of self-reinforcing kind of dynamic where the stock goes up? These companies that, it was only a year ago that people were worried about going concerns in a stock like Tesla that said they're going to run out of cash, early on, and some of these other companies like NIO, okay, how do they deal with profitability and how long can they stay there? And now that the shares have gone so far, it's like, who cares about any of that anymore when they can just tap the market?
Yeah, look, I think it's similar to what we've seen with Tesla doing that, called 3 times the last year and a half, because you're in the early days of what's going to be, in my opinion, about $1 trillion market in terms of EVs.
Dan and I agree on this point. I do believe we are in the early days of EVs. If you watched my 800 video, I'll put a link to it here. You see those pictures back in New York City when in 1906 you had 49 horse and buggies on the streets of New York City and only one Model T. Less than 10 years later, you have the exact same street, but with 49 Model Ts and only one horse and buggy. I believe that's where we're at right now between 2020 and upcoming 2030. This next decade is the EV supercycle.
But it takes capital. And ultimately, that's really been the bear story in a lot of these, that they couldn't have the capital and ultimately the cash flow and the profitability to get there. But you've seen with the equity markets and the optimism, it's given them that ability to hit the bid and ultimately, gain more and more capital. And that's something that NIO's doing. And you see with Xpeng and others in China, because it's an arms race, especially going after Tesla and others in the Chinese EV market. I think what you saw with NIO Day this past weekend, it just shows some of the battery technology. I think that forest for the trees is what investors are focused on.
Dan, you described the Chinese market as the linchpin of EV growth right now. Who's ahead in China, Tesla or NIO?
Right now, it's Tesla's world. Everyone else is paying rent.
And I like how Dan said that with conviction. It's my world, fool. Here's a squirrel trying to get a nut.
In terms of EV, and I think you've seen that really globally, but especially in China. I think they could be 250,000 units potentially on that run rate 2021. But NIO, Xpeng, and others, I think they have massive opportunities. And it's a big enough ocean for more than one boat. And that's why it's all about China, because you're looking 4.5% of automobile sales potentially going to 9-10% in the next 2 years. This is a massive market opportunity, and that's why you're seeing all these Chinese EV players continue to move higher, just given what we're seeing in terms of that inflection of demand. And NIO continues to be the golden child in terms of what we're seeing in China.
We all know that the EV market is all about China. Does Tesla have an advantage, or does NIO have an advantage in China? Well, obviously, Tesla already has a factory there at Shanghai, so they've been making vehicles, and China is one of their biggest buyers of their cars. NIO obviously has the home field advantage, as they are backed by the Chinese Communist government as well. Let's look at the vehicles delivered in 2020. First, we'll start with Tesla. We know that Tesla delivered just a little under 500,000 vehicles in 2020, compared to NIO, that delivered less than 50,000 cars in 2020. Let's jump ahead to the price to earnings ratio, kind of one of the important metrics to watch as we invest. Here's the P/E. Now, just like Tesla did not have a P/E ratio to look at a couple years ago, NIO's current P/E ratio is 0 because they're not earning enough money to make a profit. Tesla has transitioned from that since 2018 of a 0 P/E to their current P/E, which is here.
Does Tesla have political risk then for its need to be in China? If there's another legitimate car maker that people like that's doing well, is there anything stopping the government from, none of those things stopping, but just generally speaking, I would think that there's a policy risk that would apply only to Tesla here if U.S.-China relations worsen and they say, you know what, get out of here, Tesla, or something, or whatever it may be.
Yeah, and I think it speaks to what Musk has been able to accomplish. I mean, being the only U.S. manufacturer without a partner in China and Giga 3, that's a key of the success. It's the linchpin. And ultimately, I think part of the optimism that you're seeing in EV overall, Biden takes over January 20th. First of all, a green agenda across the board with Blue Senate, bullish for EVs, bullish for Tesla, GM, Fisker, and others. But also there's a view of significant ratcheting down of tensions with China. And that's bullish, of course, not just for Apple and semis, but for Tesla going forward. And that's starting to get baked into these stories.
All right, let's talk about baked in here, Dan. I mean, I know that you've been bullish on Tesla for a while. You've been right on with the price targets that many thought were lofty and unreasonable months ago. Now we see all the sell side basically follow you and these select other bulls and getting in line with the story. But at what point can they still surprise? I mean, we've got expectations of huge stimulus coming. Everybody knows that the Biden administration wants it to be very green focused, either in this round or the next one at some point. We've seen the battery tech. We've seen the sales for Tesla. What's the next rabbit they can pull out of the hat?
Well, I think now, I mean, to your point, that's a great way to put the market. It's about execution. I still think you're looking at a company that could do 750,000, potentially 800,000 units this year. Gross underestimated, profitability is underestimated. And I think what you're seeing in these valuations, remember, me and you have talked about many times, not an auto company. It's trade. In my opinion, it's a tech or disruptive technology company. That's how it should trade. But we're talking about $1 trillion market, and you can really count on two hands the companies going after this market. They continue to execute the EV vision and flex. And I think ultimately a year or two from now, we're not just looking at $1 trillion for Tesla, but in a couple of years, this could be a company that could start to approach that $1.5–2 trillion market as they execute.
So right now, in terms of price target, walk me through the latest here on Tesla that you see as something reasonable over the next year, and what is it valuation versus bottom line breakdown, right? Because now that we're talking performance, that's a little bit different, where a Tesla over the past year has been a lot about speculation, expectations, extremely high valuations. Maybe there's a future in which we actually talk about earnings as being a core part of the market cap instead of just a price to expected earnings.
And I think if you look, I can tell you many investors I talk to, okay, go out 2025, could they do $10, $12 in earnings? Look at tax credit situation. When Biden comes in my opinion, you see a doubling down of tax credits and potential restoration of credits to the likes of GM and Tesla. And that's something that really changes the whole game in terms of profitability going forward. So, I view it from $1,000 continues to be the bull case here. But if they execute, the way that we're looking, you could be ultimately, this could be something that beats numbers by 10, 15, 20% in terms of deliveries. Then you look at 1 million units in 2022, and that's where I think the whole valuation starts to change. And I just want an important point. You start to sum of the parts the company. In other words, what's the battery business worth? What's the energy business worth? What's the solar business? I think more and more that's how more investors are viewing this. Very similar as we've seen some of the parts with Apple and others.
Okay. And for NIO versus Tesla, does one have to pick one over the other right now, or are these both winners?
Both winners. Obviously, NIO I view as more totally focused on China market. Of course, they'll be in Europe this year and potentially U.S. next year. But Tesla continues to be the core EV play. But I view it, you play the whole EV supply chain, from batteries to the makers to supply chain to OEMs across the board. That's the play. Tech, EV, I think these stocks continue to go much higher, especially in what I view as just a bullish political backdrop for EV with a blue Senate.
I got one more for you, Dan, before I let you go. This is about NIO specifically, where, everybody kind of knows the popularity of Tesla among retail investors, but it's expanded now, and a lot of the institutional folks, I think, are coming around. But for NIO, there's a great article out over the weekend and this morning that was getting spread around from Bloomberg, just looking at the role that NIO has in these online trading forums on TikTok. It's like the most mentioned company out there. The number of mentions is mind-blowing. I mean, what does this mean as a catalyst? I mean, it's got to be in some sort of speculative froth. I know that doesn't mean it has to go back down to XYZ level, or that it can't get to the levels you're talking about, but isn't that a catalyst? How do you monitor that?
Yeah, I can't underscore almost the cult-like following of NIO within China. And as someone that's seen it firsthand, I think that's something where now that they're going after the sedan market, really going after Tesla a bit on potential on the S, or you could say the Y, I think it just shows the opportunity for NIO. And I think it just shows more and more what you're seeing in China on the EV space. And that's why I don't think you got to pick one. I think NIO continues to obviously be the best player there. You look at XPeng, Li Auto, and others. You got 100+ makers going after China EV. And I think we're just starting to see what's really a golden age for EV.
As you know, I am a Tesla bull. I have nothing against NIO. I think NIO has there's room for both. I think NIO has some great products. You see up top, I made over $16,000 in 1 hour from NIO last year. In closing, it's going to be exciting to watch these two companies battle it out in 2021 for that EV market space in China. It's an exciting time to be invested in Tesla. It's an exciting time to be invested in NIO. It's an exciting time to be invested in EV space altogether. And we will see what happens between Tesla and NIO. I think it's truly a race to that full self-driving. Which company can reach full self-driving first? The race to autonomy. I'm Kevin. You've been watching Tesla Today. Please consider subscribing to the channel. See you tomorrow.